So with Wicked coming out next month, I wanted to do a video talking about, or a series of videos talking about other Wizard of Oz adaptations. Also with Wizard of Oz having its 85th anniversary this year as well. I did actually review that movie earlier this year on this channel, so if you want to see my review of the original Wizard of Oz, it's up on YouTube. But I did want to talk about a series of Wizard of Oz adaptations, and all these happen to be Disney releases. So first one we're going to talk about is Muppets, the Muppets Wizard of Oz. Next week we will talk about Return to Oz, and then the week after we will talk about Oz the Great and Powerful. The Muppets Wizard of Oz is an interesting movie. And I actually have been really looking forward to this video because I'm a huge Muppets fan. I don't ever get to talk about that fact just because the reality is there aren't any Muppet projects in development. Well, there might be some I don't know about, but for most part, Muppet projects are not really in good standing over at Disney. A lot of them just get canceled after one season. They don't really make Muppet movies anymore. I'm sure they will go back to it eventually, but it is taking way too long on that. And so, like, why am I going to talk about them? And this is one of the excuses I made to talk about a Muppet movie, though. And sadly, we were talking about one of the worst ones. Let me explain my history with the Muppets in this movie. I really loved the Muppets growing up because I would visit my grandparents. They live out in the desert. So a lot of our visiting would be either us going to thrift stores near them, which they had a lot of great ones and still do, or it would be us going to the house and just sitting and watching movies because it's over 100 degrees outside. It's the desert. It's California. It's pretty bad. And, some of my fondest memories were of them showing me things like Fly the Navigator, Never Ending Story, and of course the Muppets. They loved the Muppet Show. We watched the Muppet Show constantly, over and over again. We watched all the Muppet movies we could get our hands on. So my parents, when I became so obsessed with these things, they had to get me some of the DVDs. And one of the DVDs I had, I think it was for the Muppet movie, might not have been, had an ad for the Muppets Wizard of Oz. I remember saying I wanted it, so they got me that for Christmas. I sat down, watched it, and I don't remember anything about it. And that's kind of my history with this movie. This is an interesting movie to me because this feels like a relic of the Muppets franchise in a weird way, where basically the first earlier Muppet movies were about following your dreams, kind of, more adult humor. It was more in line with the Muppet Show, but just on a movie scale, right? That was kind of those movies. Then once you got towards like the 90s era of the Muppet movies, Henson had passed away up until that point. Brian Henson, I believe, was directing some of the Muppet movies at the time, which are honestly some of my favorites and the ones that I have some of the most nostalgia for. I really love the great the Muppets, A Christmas Carol, Treasure Island, right? But those were failures. They all failed at the box office, and when they pivoted to different types of Muppet movies, one of the things they wanted to do is not do book adaptations like those films, and that's maybe some of the reason why they thought those movies didn't appeal so well. So it's kind of weird that in the early 2000s, after they were like, hey, this didn't really work for us, they come out with a TV movie adapting another book. And where, Muppet Treasure Island and A Christmas Carol were some of my favorites that they did. This one is not. I do not like this film. I don't think majority of Muppet fans like this one. It's very strange. You remember when there was Tom and Jerry and the Chocolate Factory coming out, that animated movie? And there was all these cartoon reviewers talking about, be like, man, this is weird. Like, why are you jamming these characters in a movie together? That's what this movie is. Except I would argue this movie maybe is worse. And I say worse because at least that movie's like it, like probably like an hour 20 minutes, and this is like an hour 40 minutes, and clearly have more money put into it. But it's such an epic disaster in a lot of ways. This is one of those movies that you see YouTubers edit clips of the movie out of context just for laughs. Like, this is one of those movies. There's a lot of funny clips. Like it is just bad. I don't really like this movie because for the first reason is, you know, our main lady, I'm forgetting this actress's name. If anybody knows, drop it in the comments. But she is awful in the movie. She was clearly just put there because her star power and her singing. That's literally how the movie starts, with the music video of hers. It's very awkward, forced in there. And she's a singer and she has that ability, right? But it doesn't really. But what's weird is she's not really used to work with the Muppets and sing musical numbers. Instead, it's more of her brand of music, which is more like trendy and pop music style, which is fine. But like, you would think if you're gonna get a singer to come into a Muppets movie, you would have her like, you know, do the thing with the Muppets. Muppets are very musical things. Like, I don't understand like what they were doing there, and it just was very awkward. Also, she cannot act for the life of her, and it's not her fault, right? This is a person being taken from one field to another. Sometimes that just doesn't translate, but she should not have been cast in this project for that reason. Like, I don't understand. Most of this movie felt like it was built around selling her music, and then the Muppet part of it is almost non-existent because, yes, you got Fozzie as the Cowardly Lion, you got Gonzo as the Tin Man, you got Miss Piggy as the Wicked Witch and the Good Witch, you got Pepe instead of Toto, which is like, what? It didn't, like, it should have been Rizzo. Rizzo would have made sense because Rizzo is a rat and people have rats as pets. That way you're using a Muppet character that makes more sense than having a pet shrimp. Like, the fuck? And then you got Kermit is the God, I'm going to blank. The Scarecrow. It just, like, okay, like, to me, a lot of the humor felt oddly adult and just not in like the normal Muppets ways where the jokes are really smart and there's a lot of ones for the adults to catch, but they're also not. But there's also a lot of ones for the kids to catch and a certain amount of humor, the slapstick that Muppets appeals to everybody because it has adult humor, but you know, the fact that it's flashy puppets singing songs and doing goofy things is able to make kids distract enough to make it work for both audiences. Where here it just feels like a lot of the adult jokes were a lot of sexual innuendos, really weird stuff that just did not work. It's just a very, not great. And then also, because this movie is a TV movie and it's set in the land of Oz, there's a lot of CGI that looks terrible. And not just for the time, but it just looks bad just in general. It is like unwatchable horseshit. Also, this movie's overly lit and put together, like, especially once you get to the especially when the movie starts and you're starting it in the was it Kansas? Yeah, Kansas or whatever, like the real world before she gets to Oz. It looks terrible, like very bad. And then in the movie, once you get to the land of Oz, it starts to get more colorful, but still very washed out. I'm not really sure why they chose that style. Like, it just looks bad. You know, this was at a time where the Muppets were kind of making a couple TV movies like this. They made this one, and then they made the, what is it, A Letter to Santa. These movies didn't work out. Nobody remembers them. They only have DVD releases. I don't even think these are on Disney Plus. And they're kind of, and their DVDs are now getting hard to come by. Because who wants these movies, really, other than Muppet fanatics like me who just like having them. It's just really unfortunate because movies like this, I like if this had been a theatrical release and they had done it right, I think this could have been one of the better Muppet movies. But it's just not the way it worked out. It just was a disaster. This movie just is very unfortunate. I never want to watch this movie again, honestly. It's not a very fun movie to watch. It's quite awful. And I really don't recommend seeking it out unless you're a really big Muppet fan like me who likes to seek those sort of films out. Let me know your thoughts, section, and subscribe.